I was in what I would say was a very unsustainable relationship, but I had decided that for me to break the intergenerational trauma and how things were playing out, that I had to kind of sacrifice my own happiness, or that I wasn't worthy of love or happiness. And that was the thing that was really holding me back. I was getting some traction in my career and actualizing my potential, but this was a massive just weight. Like I could feel it. It was totally weighing on me. And what happened was that I was in an environment where I was supported. And in this transformational moment, I was able to break through that belief and decide, no, I am worthy. I am worthy of love. You know what I mean? My happiness does mean something. Like I can do this. And then literally like it was about 20 minutes, it was so rapid that I had someone lean over and introduce themselves. And that was, like my next love interest basically, and prompted me to make this big change in my life and believe that I was worthy of love. And from then, I moved house, which I had major limitations in mindset about before. And that really is what propelled, a lot of the massive things that have happened, like restarting my own not-for-profit, partnering with another not-for-profit, doing really good work with people, the book thing. Everything is kind of just erupted from this belief change and this shift.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thoughts on Purpose podcast. I am very, very excited to welcome Brianna Bone to the Thoughts on Purpose podcast. Brianna, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me on. I hope that I can bring some purposeful thoughts.
I'm certain you will. I've checked out a lot of your content and I've been following you for a while. We crossed paths, but we didn't realize it. I remember we were in a supermarket. I saw you. I think you saw me. I was like, I know that woman. And then later on social media, I saw you pop up and I was like, oh my goodness, I walked past you and I didn't even have a conversation. So I'm glad we're here, finally having the conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember that distinctly. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's that guy. Oh, I know who that is. So yeah, really cool to finally be conversing.
Yeah, awesome. And you're originally from Tasmania, where I currently am. That's correct?
That's right. Yeah, I did grow up in Tasmania and then moved away about 7 years ago. I think probably in a similar area to you, given where you were at the supermarket. So.
Yeah, awesome. Very good. And I appreciate you not disclosing my hidden location. No, I'm joking. It's all good. That's all. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, awesome. I love that. So, ladies and gents, Brianna is a human potential and transformational specialist, empowering entrepreneurs and emerging leaders to take their life and business to the next level. And Brianna is very, very dedicated to what she does. Brianna is also a international best-selling author, and her book is a really awesome, catchy title that I'm excited to deconstruct. Fuck Motherhood. How good's that? That's awesome.
Stops you in your tracks.
Yeah, I love that. So good. So Brianna, like, what's got you to this place? I sense you've been on a journey. Like, it's just sensing the wisdom that's coming through your content and the way you're showing up. I'm guessing that there's a journey behind it. And if you're comfortable with sharing as much as you want to, just share the bits that will probably speak to the audience when it comes to living a purposeful life.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a really big journey behind it. I mean, if you'd asked me that I'd be getting to this point where I'm living, what's very close and more becoming my dream life, internationally best-selling author, continuously helping people, like, once upon a time that never would have been thought of, let alone believed. But that belief piece is really, really huge. And throughout the journey, it's been something that's been developed more and more and more. Like, for example, the book piece, I believe that it could happen. It happened. It became an international bestseller. So belief is huge. But, I've definitely been through a journey, big amounts of trauma in my life from, there's been death, there's been loss, there's been, mental health issues, there's been miscarriage, there's been a whole bunch of things. And I think that, someone I was talking to put this in perspective for me the other day. And I was speaking to them about all these big things that I've been through in my life. And they said, well, you need to write a book about that whole story. And I was kind of just like, yeah, but for what purpose? What purpose is there for me writing a book and talking about all these things? And what she said was, well, if someone can read about all of the things that you've been through, that you've been able to stare in the face of, been able to conquer all the fears and get to a place where you're doing what you're doing now, if anyone has just been through one of those things, then it can give them, the hope and the perseverance and the inspiration to be able to get through that as well and be able to unlock the potential that is in themselves. And for me, that's been a perspective that's been able to really start to develop this deep reverence that I have with myself, and like this great connection of gratitude for the amount of stones and the heavy boulders in my life that I've been able to turn over, that have really uncovered myself, and how when I speak to that, it really gives others permission to be able to turn those stones over too. Go too much, I don't like to really, drabble on about the traumas and things like that, but there's been a lot of stuff that's happened, and it has been a journey.
I appreciate you sharing that, Brianna. And obviously those things you've mentioned, if we were to unpack each one of those, and there's no need to, like within themselves, just by themselves, like, even the miscarriage side of things, like that is huge. And, the death, and obviously we all face death, but obviously where we are when we experience the death can really impact us in a profound way. So what I love is that despite everything you've experienced, here you are, you're showing up, you're dedicated to service, and you are very, very dedicated to your mission, and also being an awesome mum, because even though you've got this book, you've got your son, and you're dedicated to being an awesome mum, which is phenomenal. And I'm curious, like, how do you come up with that title of the book, and how does that, because I see you're an awesome mum, I get that about you already. Like, how did that title come out of this?
That was thanks to our wonderful publisher. I can't take credit for that title, but the title really is about, so many mums have that moment of thinking or saying, fuck motherhood. But not only that, a lot of mums feel guilt or shame around having that thought. Mm-hmm. So what it is just like stripping away the preconceived ideas that a lot of mothers feel as though they have to have about how they need to show up as a mother. Because the truth is that a lot of women struggle. I know that I did. I know that even like up until recently, going through relationship breakdowns and things like this, and the identity crisis that we go through, a lot of us through motherhood, there really is that honoring of self that needs to happen. And sometimes it can be tough. Sometimes we feel disconnected from our child. Sometimes we feel disconnected from ourselves. Sometimes it's a really hard journey, and it's okay to feel that way. I think what's worse than having an experience where you feel as though you don't quite have this motherhood thing sorted out is dishonoring yourself in the truth of your experience. So, basically just saying it's okay to say fuck motherhood, and to feel as though you want to throw in the towel or things are really hard, because it is. Like, you're raising an entire human being. Like, it's genuinely a challenging thing.
Yeah, definitely. And so just being real about what you're experiencing and not trying to hide the fact that, it can be super challenging. And I think that's a conversation that's so powerful. And a lot of people have guilt around having those feelings. So I think that your book is really phenomenal, because it gives people permission to just be real about what their experience is. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Really what it is, I like to describe it as a powerhouse of women who are basically gathered with, collective mothers sharing stories around a fire, you know what I mean? And it just has that sense of home, of we're all here together. Like, it's okay. There's space for you to be who you are and to really merge into what that means and looks like.
Okay. So and I've not read the book yet. I'm sure I'd get a lot out of it, even though it is for mothers. Yeah. Like, I'm curious, have you had dads who've read it yet?
Oh, I haven't had feedback from dads who've read it yet, actually. But I do have some dad/male friends I might prod for some feedback.
Yeah, that's cool, because I guess like it's always good to know maybe what the other person is experiencing. Like, that's just my perception. Like, I'd be fascinated to really understand what my wife's experiencing, just so I can connect on that a little bit more. So it's so powerful, and it's very brave of you to have that conversation. I'll say that as well. So well done.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm at this point in my life where I feel like, I don't like to talk about wounds that are still gaping and bleeding. Like, I think that for me, as long as something that I've been through that has at least developed into a scar that has a story, and that story really is wisdom, I'm totally like happy to transparently wear my heart on my sleeve, because there's so much permission that our stories give for other people. And I think that's in that journey of honoring the self, which is to be able to share your stories. And it's also really healing for the self to share the stories and have them be well received, because a lot of times, you know, we potentially get negative feedback about sharing our truth, so it discourages us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really just all on board with lighting the way for being vulnerable, being courageous, holding space for that self, and just speaking truth.
Yeah, I love that. When it comes to that, because I know when a lot of people first begin, so say for example, people have known them as a particular person or in a particular way or role, and then someone wakes up and they're like, I want to start speaking about more of my experiences. And they start doing that and they start expressing their opinions. Could you speak into, because I'm sure you've had people who have like, you know, what's the word, like backlash, that they lash out at you because you're expressing an opinion that it's too real for them. How would you recommend people deal with that? Like when you've got, say, someone on social media who's attacking you for having a difference of opinion, and for speaking your truth, like how do you handle that personally?
I think it's really important to always have this perspective of respecting each person's model of the world. So for me, like, I know that, you know, I'm honoring myself by speaking my truth, but I also know that my truth isn't for everyone. Yeah. And, you know, I'm really happy for someone else to have a different opinion. That's amazing. And it's really important, I think, if that conversation is going on, to, you know, thank that person for sharing. If you want to maybe sort of question them to have their own sort of perspective of why it is that they have that perspective, that's okay. But then also just make it known, well, you know, this is my truth. You know, what I'm sharing is completely developed from my journey. I honor and acknowledge that your journey might be different, and that's completely okay. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things that can happen is, in that difference of perspective, we kind of sever ourselves from connection, which is really unfortunate, because, you know, the ideal is to be able to have healthy dialogue where different perspectives kind of get to, you know, check each other out and say, well, okay, well, how does my perspective fit with that? You know, maybe I want to take that on, maybe I don't want to take that on. But to be able to, you know, I kind of want to say lovingly observe and listen to that and utilize your discernment, whether to take it on board or to not take it on board. But I think, you know, doing your best to not be personally offended is really important. So do your best to not decide limiting decisions about yourself and the world around you because someone has a different perspective, but also do your best to still be compassionate about that person. Like, it's quite possible that they have been triggered, and they could be behaving in a way that's indicative of a fight or flight response or something like that. So it's just important to have these kind of things to run through your head if that does happen.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love it how you just brought it back to those, I guess, primal responses that can be there as well, that might drive people to say something. They might be regretting it even after they've said it, and they're like, oh dear, I wish I'd posted that. So yeah, we never know. I love your answer. How have people responded to the book overall? Obviously it's become an international best-selling author, so I'm assuming it's you know, being picked up and received really well. Have you had any kind of backlash from the title you've chosen or anything like that? I
really haven't, to be honest. Like, everything has just been positive. Yeah. One of the most moving comments I received from it was, you know, while I was going through the journey that I write about in the book, I really felt as though I lacked that sense of belonging. And I got a piece of feedback from a mother who basically said that reading my chapter gave her belonging. So for me, it was like a deeply transformational moment to have been able to give something to someone that I didn't have. And that was amazing. So far, everything has been positive, which is great. Yeah, of course. And again, it's a relevant conversation. So I think you're just speaking to what's not being said for a lot of people. So yeah. It's great to hear. I'm so pumped to hear, you know, former Tassie woman now out there making big moves. It's so cool. Good on you. That's awesome. So cool. What's a conversation that, because I know you can go to I know you can really speak to the truth. Mm-hmm. You know?
What's a conversation that you don't have that you'd love to have more often?
Ooh. For me, it's the conversation. I think it's got something to do with emotions, to be honest. And I speak about this, and it's relevant because it's been something that I've been through recently, that I think that the level of, I kind of want to say, dishonoring that we have for ourselves runs so deep that, with example for mothers, there's a lot of guilt and shame around having a vulnerable experience where you don't feel as though you have it together. But that's not just exclusive to mothers, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people feel guilt and shame around being angry about something or being sad about something, or maybe they're grieving, but they judge themselves for that, you know what I mean? So there's this tendency to dishonor ourselves or avoid the truth of how we're really feeling, and we kind of tend to bury our head in the sand. Like, I think it's important to look at it from a Buddhist perspective, which is the middle way. So really the ideal is to not avoid our emotions, not to dissociate, not to add to, but to kind of just notice the emotion, to acknowledge the emotion. And psychology will tell you that it's really healthy to get a different perspective on your emotions. So write about it, play music, talk about it, things like this. But I think that there's been something that has happened as we've been growing up. It could be a rejection of vulnerability, some sort of, big T or little t trauma that has us kind of, maybe it's that I'm not worthy type thing, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it looks like, that has us really dissociating from our true experience. So I really love to show up in a truthful space with people that brings them back to how they're really feeling. And, people might say to me, I'm sad about this. And I'll be like, yeah, it makes sense that you're sad about that, like, from what you've just told me. So being able to give people the safety and the encouragement to be able to sit with that emotion, because a lot of people feel as though if they talk about what's going on for them, then, like, they can't do that, for example. So that's one side of things. But as a result of avoiding emotion, I feel like we also do it with the other emotions. So maybe the more beautiful emotions, like, they're all beautiful, even anger and sadness, but, the things like joy, the things like peace, the things like love, like, we also get in the way of receiving and really embodying those emotions too. So, I love to be able to coach people and work with people in the processes of reassociating with the traumas of their life and getting them to see them in a different light, and really getting them to feel, the feelings of the joy, of the gratitude, and things like that. Because I think that we do live in a largely logical space, to the extent that a lot of our emotions are really undervalued, and even to the point where the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of the emotions is avoided, which is really unfortunate, because there's a deep sense of coming home that really is within those spaces.
I love that. I love that. So for you, Brianna, because I know also there's people who can get lost in the emotion, like where they go too far. And I'm guessing that for those people who maybe are being consumed by emotions to the point where they can't do anything, they can't take action anymore, they're not in that middle ground anymore. They've kind of lost the balance, and they've actually been, like, completely, again, consumed by that feeling. Is that right? Is that your understanding of it as well?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the add to. Like, a lot of the time, so if an emotion comes up for me and I'll feel it in my body, that sensation might only last for about 90 seconds. But if I'm cognitively holding on to that, then I will be extending my own suffering, basically, by mentally holding it in place. So generally, if you are able to practice the middle way, like, the emotion comes up, you feel it, like, I feel anger, like, I feel that in my body, I feel sadness. And then it just dissipates. Like, you might want to do some breath work, blow it out, and things like that. A lot of the time, if we have limitations, like, in belief about ourselves, then, this sort of victim mentality, or we're not worthy, or whatever it looks like, we can, hold on to that emotion for longer, and that causes prolonged pain and suffering, which is another pattern in itself.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then the bigger part of this, when people aren't processing these emotions in healthy ways, like, they start manifesting in all sorts of nasty ways. It can be diseases and all the other stuff. And like, you've probably heard I don't know how accurate it is, but I swear I once heard that I think 95% of reasons why people go to doctors are emotional or mental. Have you heard something similar to that?
I haven't seen those stats, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I've been reading about how, for example, there's more and more research coming out how people who have cancer, there have been people who have taken these people through questionnaires, not knowing about their diagnosis, and they've been able to basically come to the conclusion based on the answers to their questions about their emotional state, who has cancer and who doesn't. And there's about a 75% accuracy just based on questions about their emotions.
Wow.
Which is totally fascinating.
That is.
Yeah.
My goodness. Actually, speaking of cancer and this whole topic, so I've trained in rapid transformation therapy, and within that, we got trained by an oncologist, and she had been, doctor for many, many years. And this woman had a beautiful perspective because, she could see the relevance of like modern medicine, and she understand the importance of it and the importance of being and the necessity to sometimes have that acute action when someone manifests with a cancer or something. And where in the case where it has to be removed, but then she said, that's not enough. We've got to deal with why this came into the body.
Absolutely.
And so it was beautiful to hear her awareness of that. And then she spoke about spontaneous healings, like these things that we just can't explain. And then she said what she's put it down to is that what's happened is these people have actually moved to a new level of consciousness, and that cancer can't exist in that new level of consciousness, and so it dissipates. And I heard her say that, I was like, that is pretty amazing coming from someone of her stature.
That's incredible. Yeah. And I think, there are these things that are happening now with, practitioners being able to see that, there needs to be another perspective that's added to these conversations. Yeah, that's really incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so I love what you're saying, and it's just music to my ears. And I think that the work you're doing is just so incredible, especially because you said you're moving to more executives and people in these higher leadership positions. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is something that's just happened with me naturally. I think that one of the things that, I think we all need to do is to become more connected with our intuition and to feel our heart's desires and feel those little pulls that we have in certain directions. So I've been able to naturally find myself in the space where I've been training large companies, and their managers and things like that. And notice that that's just really inspirational for me. One of the questions that I asked myself recently, I was going through this thing. I left a long-term relationship. I moved house. I did a whole bunch of new trainings and things like that. It was a really transformative time. And the question that bubbled up for me was, how can I show up and where can I show up to be making more of an impact? And then it dropped in. It's like large organizations, what I see is that companies are a conduit of change potential. So it's like, obviously a company generally wants higher productivity, client retention, revenue and things like this. But then it's like, you look at the people who are driving that, and a lot of them have burnout, they have stress, they have mental health presentations, their relationships are falling apart, their health is suffering. So it's, well, how can a company utilize the space that they have to be able to influence the individual to amplify their conditions, which then empower the individual and then obviously, helps the company grow. And I think it's about creating this like beautiful, it's kind of like an infinity loop of feedback, organization, individual conditions that really complement one another. And I think within that, obviously I've done work with entrepreneurs and people who have their own business, but within organizations, not everyone wants to have their own business. But I think that no matter if you're working for yourself or for someone else, it's really important to be able to drop into what that purpose is for you and what are your gifts, and to be able to have a space where you're able to live within those realms. So for me, being able to work within companies and help people drop into that space, help improve the relationship with, families, with health, with all areas of life is huge for me. And that's, really a way to be able to make more of an impact.
Definitely. I love that. I love that. And the thing I've seen to really speak to, I guess, the people you're supporting, Brianna. There's a lot of great business-minded people out there who are excellent at being entrepreneurs and leaders, but they, that requires a lot of energy to show up on that level and to be in that role. And sometimes they can neglect all the other areas.
Yeah.
And then they have this incredible success, but because they've just not taken care of the family, they've not taken care of all the other parts, like their life crumbles and it brings the success they've had in the business with it. And while I believe also that was a necessary journey, if that was their experience, if we can avoid it happening and we can, put things in place to make sure that they've just consistent momentum in all areas, I think that's a far better strategy moving forward than, I guess, just having everything fall apart once you've had so much growth and momentum over the years. So I love what you're doing. That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's about being able to be structurally sound. Like, it's if your career is excelling, that's fantastic. But if your health is suffering or your relationships are breaking down, even if you don't really have hobbies in your life, things like this, if you're not, if you don't have healthy social connections, things like that, like that structure isn't sound. It's going to be lopsided and a little bit topsy-turvy. And then the other question is, well, it's great that you're achieving in your career, but how really fulfilled are you if you're feeling unwell because of your health, or you don't have anyone to celebrate with because those networks haven't been developed and things like that. And then the other question is, well, okay, so you get a success. How long does that have you feeling joyful for? Maybe it lasts for a couple of days, maybe it lasts for a week or something, which is fine. But how do you feel after that? Do you go back to feeling disconnected? Do you go back to running away from the life that you have to the next success, because that's what gives you that consistent little top up of fulfillment that you don't have any other time? So how do we shift that by focusing on the other conditions in your life that give you continuous fulfillment? It still means that you get to have all of the success, but instead of doing it in such a way that has you running away from your life and yourself, you're able to be more embodied, more in who you really are. Which is more sustainable and more structurally sound. Definitely. So really you get all the things that you want and then more consistently.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And there's only so much we can do by ourselves. Like, that's the reality of it. And even as parents, we need support around us.
Yeah.
And while there are times where we might have to do it on our own, I get that. Ultimately, moving forward, I think it's really important to find ways to get some support. Like, just get people around you who can have your back and who you can turn to if you're having days where you're just not in your power, in your zone. So also, what I'm hearing from you is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you support these leaders succeed from a healthy place. So they're not just they're not just addicted to wins, like reaching goals, and they never actually feel fulfilled. So you're actually supporting them succeed from a really healthy place. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I kind of look at it like holistic success, which is you can look at your life and feel as though you can be content and fulfilled in all those areas. I feel like there's nothing worse than thinking about your health or your relationships and getting that stabbing feeling in your heart, like something's missing, you know what I mean? And that feeling, it really detracts from you. And I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this scale of emotions where things like, grief and fear and shame and things like that are kind of at the lower spectrum, and you've got joy and love and enlightenment up higher. Yep. Thinking about it from an emotional perspective, if there's something that's not quite right in your life and you're feeling those emotions, like that's something that's going to be holding you back for sure. So yeah, holistic success is really important, and being able to maintain that from a healthy way. Even if you look at, experiencing burnout and things like that, like a lot of people prioritize their success or their career over themselves, and then they experience burnout, which just isn't sustainable. So it's about getting to shift that perspective and playing the long game. And, from here we can get into the conversation about intergenerational wellness and things like that. Like it's just that perspective shift that is needing to change.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. You mentioned changing your own beliefs before and transforming the beliefs you used to have. Is there a standout belief that you've developed that has really allowed you to up level in your life and really step into this work?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I do believe that, myself included and all people, like our true nature is that of mass potential. And really it's about creating the environment and the conditions for that to thrive. And I think from that, it's about believing in our ability to turn over those stones and have our potential actualized from that uncovering. Or it's the ability to be able to take things that have happened to me and being able to utilize them as gifts and platforms. Like I like to look at my life as, looking for the gifts in disguise and being able to trust that everything that I encounter is for my own evolution and what can I learn from this and how does that serve me and things like that. But I mean, I'll give you one example of a rapid belief change. Like by the time I was 26, based on my own, I guess, growing up, like my childhood experience and things like that, I was in what I would say was a very unsustainable relationship, but I had decided that for me to break the intergenerational trauma and how things were playing out, that I had to kind of sacrifice my own happiness or that I wasn't worthy of love or happiness. And that was the thing that was really holding me back. Like, that's what I mean when, I was getting some traction in my career and actualizing my potential, but this was a massive just weight. Like I could feel it. It was totally weighing on me. And what happened was that I was in an environment where I was supported. And in this transformational moment, I was able to break through that belief and decide, no, I am worthy. I am worthy of love. You know what I mean? My happiness does mean something. Like I can do this. And then literally like it was about 20 minutes, it was so rapid that I had someone lean over and introduce themselves. And that was, like my next love interest basically, and prompted me to make this big change in my life and believe that I was worthy of love. And from then, I moved house, which I had major limitations in mindset about before. And that really is what propelled, a lot of the massive things that have happened, like restarting my own not-for-profit, partnering with another not-for-profit, doing really good work with people, the book thing. Everything is kind of just erupted from this belief change and this shift. But that could look the same. Yeah, like that could be your relationship. It could be your health. It's that thing that's holding you back that when you face it and you uncover it, just gives you massive traction.
I love that. Wow, that's huge. So just talk me through when you had that belief shift, what were you doing? Like, did you just change the conversation? Is that all you did?
Yeah, I mean, really what I felt into was my deep yearning. And my deep yearning was that, I did want that connection, but that connection wasn't just with someone else, it was with myself as well. Mm-hmm. So for me to be able to do that, like I had to step into that new narrative about worth, that I could do it, a belief. I look at belief as a spotlight of belief. Like if I've got a limited spotlight of belief with whatever it is that I want to do, I might see none or a few, one or two options. But if I've got a wider spotlight of belief, then there'll be more options available to me. So for me to be able to just change that belief and hear my own yearnings and feel as though those were valid, that I was allowed to actualize them, and then to really focus my intent on that actualization was the thing that changed.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So when it comes to, did you say feel your own yearnings or hear your own yearnings?
Yeah, like on a really deep, like heart sense level.
Okay, so for someone listening to this and they are in the position you were in, how do they do that? How do you hear your own yearnings?
Well, I kind of look at it like being able to surrender, you know what I mean? And a lot of the time we're really kind of held within the body. Yeah. And this is very similar with if you've got pain in the body as well. If you've got pain in the body, a lot of the tendency is to tense up. Mm. But if we actually relax and listen to that underlying tone of what's happening in the body, so that might be some wisdom or an emotion, and really honor that, then it'll start to dissipate. So for me, it was being able to get a little bit out of my head, more in my body, and then really just listen in that moment, like, what is it truly that my heart wants, and allow that space, like really just allow that space for that to drop in.
Okay, so you were like, and again, I'm doing my best to make this really practical for anyone listening. Would you recommend for someone who wants to action this, would you just say, sit down, do some meditation, just be still, if nothing else, and just tap in? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what it looks like for you. Like for me, I'm really big with movement. So, and I get in a really great state when I'm moving my body, because it helps me to regulate my nervous system, and I feel like I'm becoming more embodied in my body. You know what I mean? And that for me is where my wisdom is.
Okay.
So it might look like doing some breath work. It might look like doing some meditation, but being in that space where you kind of allow yourself to not be really fixed on a thought in particular. Like it's one of those things, I don't know if you've heard, but like being bored is really good, because it allows your neural pathways to be able to connect in such a way that they wouldn't if you were totally focused on something. It's, you know, kind of why we have great ideas in the shower, or while we're washing the dishes, or things like that. So being able to kind of be in this in-between space where you're just able to, you know, connect in with what's happening in the body and just see what comes up, you know. But it can be helpful if you want to presuppose like a question to yourself, you know, put a directive for your unconscious mind, like, you know, what is it that I need to know right now? Or, you know, what is it that I truly want, or something like that. But then allow yourself to surrender and see what comes up, and then just pay attention. You know, sometimes it could be in the body. I love people to be able to associate with the wisdom that's in the body rather than in an external thing, but sometimes it might be an external thing that kind of prompts you to get into that process.
1,000%. Yeah, I love what you're sharing. I agree with it 1,000%. Anytime I've felt really stuck in my life, I've done exactly what you've said, where I've just tuned in. And sometimes it took me a while. And this is the thing, like looking back over my life, if I was just, not that I want to change anything because it was meant to be the way it was, but, you know, just I had these times I spent too long just not actually listening. Like I didn't tune in to like, what do I need right now? Like what do I really want to create in this moment? What am I meant to be doing right now? And I just tried, like I was just so caught up in the doing, like you said, I didn't allow myself just to be and create the space. And as soon as I did, like you said, like you get the little prompt. It might just be like, message this person. It might be like, call this person, or send that email or something. You just do it and just bang. And then you forget you're even in it.
Yeah.
It's like things like, and looking back, I'm like, I've just had so many of those in my life, and I'm thinking about them as you share that. So I agree 1,000%. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is important that, you know, give yourself permission to take the action that follows from that happening. You know, for me, when I had that belief shift, like I literally took a step forward, and then that's where the person was who met me. But I think that's a really beautiful story, or a metaphor of how that plays out on a larger life scale.
Yeah, that's huge. And you just nailed it. Take the action, take the inspired action. Don't just think about it, take the action.
Yeah, you got to do the thing. I think it's, you know, showing it to yourself, but it's also showing you, you know, there's something about the universe will move to support people who walk their path, or something like that. But yeah, like you're showing that you are committed, you know what I mean? And it does take a little bit of courage sometimes, because we're literally using our willpower to be able to change our patterns and to step out from what is known, from what is comfortable. And there needs to be that trust that, you know, if you're following that intuition, that deeper knowing that you've got, and you're taking the steps forward, then that is going to lead to your best outcomes, because it's you being the authentic version of you.
1,000%. Yeah, that trust. I love that word, trust. So good. I'm loving this conversation. Who've been some standout mentors in your life, Brianna? Like, have you had people who have really caused you to up level on your journey, who have really inspired you?
Okay, yes, I have. I mean, my first mentor, Ben Harvey, has definitely been someone who has shown me how to really connect in and just like be who I am in terms of presenting and things like that. So he really inspired me to, you know, just break through everything, like knowing that no matter what it is, no matter what's holding you back, there's going to be some sort of catalyst that's going to help you break through to be able to be more of who you are and help more people. And then, you know, obviously Tony Robbins is always a mentor to many, but then, you know, more recently, like people like Gabor Mate, you know, I'm potentially going to be doing some learning with him quite soon that I'm really passionate about, which will be really exciting.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's incredible. But then people like Wayne Dyer, of course, he's a gem. Yeah.
I love all of those people. That's so cool. I notice you're very much so into music, like you integrate a lot of music, and I notice those two values, like the movement and the music. Has music always been a part of your life, or is that something that you've started integrating recently?
Probably about maybe kind of like 11 years ago, music became a big part of my life. And even before that, it was a big part of it, but there was a big shift in my musical journey about 11 years ago when I started going to transformational gatherings where there was a lot of psychedelic music playing. And like, that's been a big catalyst for me, like being able to get into a trance-like state through music where I'm able to connect more in with that wisdom. Yeah, to the point now where I just feel as though I have this beautiful relationship with music and with my body and with the energy that's kind of in between those spaces.
I love that. And I think it's really cool how you're using multiple vehicles to really stay connected in your life. And I think that's really important for people to take away, where there's no one thing. This is my opinion. There's no one thing. Like, it's important to find out all of the things, like all of these beautiful elements that enrich your life and that cause you to feel connected, cause you to really be in your power and give yourself permission to use them. And that's one thing I love about what you do, Brianna, is, you know, I see you integrating them. Like whenever I check out your stories or something like that, or your posts, like I see you there, like you're either kind of teaching or doing some coaching through your content, or you're sharing music, or, you know, you're training. And I see those things pretty clearly, like they're your values and you're living by them. I love this. I could talk to you for ages. I'm curious how people can get connected to all the awesomeness that you have going on in the world. Like how do people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So pick your platform of preference, you know, really. I mean, Instagram, it's I am Brianna Bone. I've got the website, emergeauthentic.com.au. And then, of course, Facebook, which is where I'm probably the most active in my content and things like that. And then also on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And as always, we've got the links beneath wherever you're watching this. So definitely go ahead and check those out. So Brianna, I've got a question that I like to ask everyone on my, as we wrap up the final call, and or rather we wrap up the call. And I think you're going to share something really incredible. No pressure. But no, I know the way you are. I know you tapped into a lot of wisdom, which is beautiful. If you were to get access to all the platforms you just spoke about, to the back end of them, and you had control for 1 minute, and you could talk to the billions of people who are on these platforms, and you had 1 minute to share a message, and then these platforms will get erased forever, like yours was the last message.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Great
like,
question.
Yeah, no, thank you. So this is, you know, tap into your amazing heart, and I want you to share, like, what would you say to people?
I think it really would be that, like, give yourself unwavering permission to be able to tap into your heart, and from what you realize is your heart's desires, combine that with the belief that, you know, if you can imagine it, if you can think it, that you can make it so. Like, literally everything that is, everything that we say, everything that we do, everything that is created today was once imagined. So be able to honor that depth of potential that is within you, and be able to see yourself as a creator. Like, it is in you, it is yours, because it is yours to actualize. And it's just our belief in our capability. Sometimes it's connecting with the right people, sometimes it's being in the right environment, and it's doing the mindset work and the emotional work to be able to get yourself in a prime position and prime conditions to be able to take action and actualize that. and what that is your gifting and your purpose, I mean, that's it.
I love that. There's so much within that for people to unpack. Now, Brianna, like I said, that was the final question, but I've actually got one more. Because this is the Thoughts on Purpose podcast, and I do love to ask every one of my guests this. And this is really relevant, I guess, I always, when I ask this question, I'm thinking of someone right now who's listening to you or watching you, and they're like, I don't know, really, but what? I don't know. I feel like I'm different, which is a huge belief I know a lot of people have. They're like, I don't know, do I have a purpose on this earth? Like, do I actually have a purpose? Do you believe every human being has a purpose on earth, Brianna?
I do, with the comprehension that purpose is different for everyone, you know what I mean? And it's going to be a combination of, I like to be able to get people to look at the things that have happened in their life and be like, what are the things that have happened to you that you don't want to happen to anyone else? And is there something within that is your purpose? Or what are the things that give you the greatest joy? You know what I mean? What is it if you tap into the things that you really want for your life? Like, what do you see? What do you want for yourself? Things like that. Like, I think that we've all kind of got this imprint or this blueprint in our story, in our heart's desires, in our joy, that starts to help us see the weaving of what our purpose is. And it's just about being able to look at it. Like, sometimes it's looking at it laterally or a different perspective and things like that.
Yeah, so good. And I think it was Joseph Campbell who said, follow your bliss.
Yeah, that's potent.
Yeah, like follow the bliss. And from that, and it is about giving ourselves permission. Like you said, we've all got these things. You said it so truthfully. We've all got these, but it's about actually acknowledging that, being like, wow, I do have things that light me up. And I have to do something with my life, or I get to do something with my life. Why not go after what I love? And I really admire that about you, Brianna. Like, you have gone after what is your truth. And I know that because I can see how you show up in the world. And someone wouldn't be able to show up like you show up if they weren't living their truth. I know that. So I'm acknowledging you as a fellow Tasmanian and just as another human being, that, for going after what you believe in, and for being an amazing example of a powerful woman for your son, and also just being such a powerful woman for all the other mums who are going to read your book. And out of curiosity, where can people get your book? Is that on your website as well?
Yep. So that will be on the website. There's a page on there from the website, but it's also available on Amazon. And even if you just type in "fuck motherhood," it'll come up. Awesome.
Brianna, thank you so much for joining us today. Greatly appreciate you.
Absolute pleasure. I really love the candid conversations and the wisdom that is born through the points of relation. So thanks so much.
My pleasure.